Hey, so I'm going to show real quick how I built the bow for my archery project in Dreams. This build takes cardboard, some tape, some strings, some rubber bands, and a dual shock. So there's probably a more efficient way to do it, but that's the build that I got while I was prototyping. Anyway, here it is. Okay, so here's some close-up gameplay that I have running just real quick to show you. You pull back on the string, that pulls back on the arrow, which then hits the target. You can also miss. Now you need to charge the bow or notch the arrow by pressing the touchpad on the controller. And I'll show you that here zoomed out in a second. Anyway, you can just turn it up and down, and that's how that goes. Here's some zoomed out gameplay just so you can see the bow in action. So you press the touchpad to load the arrow, pull back on the string, angle the bow how you want, and release to fire. I have a build I want to do where I'm reaching over my shoulder to load the next arrow. For right now, it's just set to touchpad. Yeah. Alright, so I've got my bow build here. What it uses are some stiff pieces of cardboard. This thinner one as the base, these longer stiff ones to make up the rest of the bow, the dual shock strapped on top, these rubber bands, a couple of bit couplers from a toolkit that I have, some tape, and then this string that has very little give when you pull on it. It's meat wrapping string that I found at a grocery store. Now how I did the build is I took that thin base piece, I took the longer stiff pieces and kind of angled them out from that base piece and just wrapped a bunch of tape around it. Tape's not important. If you can find some other way to attach something, that's great. It just needs to be pretty stiff. The thumbsticks have rubber bands looped around them. Those rubber bands are tied to the string. That string is run through the couplers, which are attached to the ends of the long stiff pieces, and that just loops back around to the dual shock. So when you pull on this piece, it'll pull on those rubber bands. Okay, so with everything strung together, let me show you how it works. The thumbsticks, when they're pulled outwards, that's what charges the bow. When they're released back to neutral, that's what fires. And then in this build, I've got the touchpad which loads the next arrow. I'm working on a quiver at the moment. It's not quite ready, but hopefully will be soon. The dual shock, when it's held upright and is tilted up and down, that will change the angle of the bow in this build. In the first video that I used, it was a motion controller that wasn't being tracked by the camera that was changing the angle. And I've got a refinement for that setup that I want to get ready. So anyway, that's how kind of roughly it works. I'll show you the in Dreams footage here in a minute. But yeah. Alright, I'm just going to run through the logic real quick for this bow build. I'm recording it on my phone just so I can have all the footage in one place. Now here in this microchip, I've got a controller sensor that is set to remote for player 2. That sensor has the two outputs for left stick and right stick run through these calculators, which are set to engage at greater than 0.3. 0.3 is not critical, that's just so it, if the thumbstick is nudged, it doesn't engage. Now those are being run to two places. This first one is through to this signal manipulator, which halves the output of each of these. So even though this is giving a 1.0 output, it's only when they're run together through this that this gives a 1.0 output. Otherwise it's a 0.5. That engages this keyframe, which pulls the string and the arrow back. And then when that's disengaged, obviously the string and arrow return. The other places those calculators are run to are these AND gates here in this signal manipulator. This AND gate combines them to this, which engages only when the string is released. That string releasing sets the thumbsticks back to neutral, which runs through this AND gate with this counter, which I'll get to in a minute. So when that counter is set to full and these are set back to neutral, then this sound plays of the bow launching the arrow, and then that also sends a signal to this emitter that I have on the bow. This counter here is essentially the charge for the arrow. Now I have it in this build set to the touchpad on player 2, just so that it's all in one place. I'm working on a quiver at the moment, but that's yet to come. Anyway, so when that touchpad is pressed, that adds a charge to this counter. When that counter is full at 1, that then gives a signal for this, which in tandem with the calculator bits. Anyway, when the emitter emits, then it resets the counter. So essentially you've got to string an arrow each time. That's just for immersion. You can have a build where that's disengaged and you just keep firing arrows. I'm just kind of doing mimic of a real world bow. Anyway, another thing I've got going to change the angle of the bow is this little ball here. Now this is being possessed by player 2. When the controller is rotated up and down, it moves this bow up and down, which activates these detection zones. So when it's moved into this fallout range, the closer it is to this darker green box, this more solid box, it gives a stronger output. So, oops. Anyway, it'll engage these keyframes, which have the bow tilting up and down. The fallout is so that it goes gradually depending on where that ball is. So when you tilt the controller upwards, the controller attached to the bow, that ball will go upwards, which will engage these detection zones, which gradually will engage the keyframes for tilting up and down. That's what that is. This action recorder is just for this target here, just so it moves up and down, so I have a moving one. That's not too important. And that's just text instructions for the build. So I forgot to mention real quick the force applier that I have attached to the bow. This force applier right now is set to have 0 effect on paint strokes, namely the string here, but when activated with the keyframe here, adds force to that string. So if you can see down there at the corner, not affected, pulled back, not affected, pulled back. Another thing I forgot to explain real quick is this impact sensor here, which detects bumps against these green blocks, which I'm using as targets. And then that will send outputs to these sounds, and then also will just destroy the arrow. Now I could have it like stick there for a minute. That's going to be coming in another build. Anyway, just wanted to explain that real quick. Alright, so that was my build for my bow prototype. This particular version is just kind of easier to get set up, relatively anyway, so that you guys can test it, you guys can have fun and build your own bows and just use my level. There's another version I'm working on which allows for 3D aiming. It involves that motion controller in that one video, that first video I posted. And then also this quiver idea that I'm working on, but I need to figure out a way to essentially attach the controller to me in such a... Anyway, I've got some more work to do on that before I release that version. In the meantime, there's this proof of concept minigame version of it that you guys can build at home. So anyway, thanks for enjoying my work, and more refinements to come on this one. So, thanks.